Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Stitch Bliss Corner. Now before I begin, I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures from the buttons video that I did, that I held up upside down. I think it was towards the end and I might have been getting a bit fatigued. So I just thought I'd show them to you right way up before I go on to what I'm going to be doing today. So these were the ones. And the other one, oh yes, I sort of chopped that off slightly, so I thought I'd just show you that one. And also these beauties. It just didn't seem fair to have them the wrong way up. Okay. Now this video is going to be a little bit of a magical mystery tour because it's partly about Spanish blackwork. And I was thinking about the blackwork when I went to bed one night, and I woke up the next morning and all I could think of was a piece by an artist called Escher, Day into Night. Now I'll show you a picture of it. He became just about the most famous graphic artist in the world. Now this is Day and Night, and it was done in 1938. And the technicality of it is mind-blowing, but if you look carefully, you will see that these shapes are coming up from the fields, from the landscape, and forming into birds. They're blackbirds flying into day. There's the day light. And at the same time, the fields below on this side are forming into white birds, pieces first, then white birds going into the night. Very symmetrical in its own way. And little did I know that the influence for Escher's work and the influence for blackwork were both from the same source. So in a strange way, blackwork and Escher are connected. So I thought, well, this is very interesting. So of course, something that was just going to be about blackwork is going on to talk about Escher. So I'll cover the blackwork first, and I think most stitchers know a bit about this is history of blackwork, but and it's believed that Catherine of Aragon brought Spanish blackwork to England. But actually blackwork was already in England, because after the Crusades, some of the Moors did go to England and helped with building various pieces of architecture there, bringing their skills, because they had great mathematical skills. And of course our system of numbering is from the Arab world. Actually, you have Arabic. It replaced the Roman numerals because it was seen to be a much easier system. Now here's Catherine of Aragon, and she did popularize blackwork, and that's why it was called Spanish blackwork, because when she came over with all her women, they naturally enough brought all the skills of blackwork with them. So I'll just do a little bit about blackwork here. This is from The World of Cross Stitching by Juliet Bracken. It's from a magazine, and I've just got here. Blackwork is delicate, precise, repeating patterns, decorative and worked in an outlining stitch, using black cotton and maybe some metallic thread as an accent colour. Wearing blackwork clothes was once a sign of wealth. It can be used for borders and motifs. Now, you'll find I've got some pictures, but you'll find that round the edge of cuffs, they would put blackwork, and it would hide the dirt and the grime, which had a practical function then. It can be used to draw the outline of a large shape such as a leaf, an animal or a person, which are filled in by repeating blackwork patterns. Darker and lighter blackwork patterns can be used to show shading on a picture. In the 16th century, it was fashionable to have Hans Holbein paint your portrait, wearing your finest clothes. Catherine Howard wore a gown decorated with blackwork at the cuffs and neck. As Holbein included all this detail in his paintings, people began to call the double running stitch used in blackwork Holbein stitch. Elizabethan stitchers liked to embroider household items such as pillow covers and cushion covers, as well as clothes. Catherine of Aragon is I've already said that bit. Blackwork on linen was the most common domestic embroidery technique for clothing: shirts, smocks, sleeves, ruffs and caps, and for household items such as cushions. And the poorer people used blackwork to give their clothes a lace-like appearance, because lace was so expensive. Now, historic blackwork is rare to find well preserved, as the iron in the dye corroded and the thread. And there are currently no conservation techniques that can stop the decay. Spanish threads had less iron in them, excuse me, so have lasted longer. And there is also scarlet work. Oh dear, sorry, I don't know what's happened to my throat today. So that's a little bit about the blackwork, and we'll just go on now, and I'll just show you some examples here. This is from New Stitches, issue 114, and it just shows some of the blackwork. Then we have, this was a Christmas supplement of New Stitches, issue 43. Let's see if I can find. Sorry, I'm just looking for the actual work rather than the chart. Oh, well, because it was a Christmas issue, it had all other things there, but you can see the blackwork in the background there as a kind of a table runner. But ironically, that's in white, not black. You get the idea. I'll just see if there's anything there. And here we have some work there. This is from I don't know, World of Cross Stitching. I'm not sure of the issue. But there's some quite nice techniques there. Now this one, The World of Cross Stitching. How to stitch blackwork style and the things you need to know. One, it's important to get good tension on your back stitches when working fine blackwork patterns. If they seem too loose or too tight, practice on a spare piece of fabric until you get the tension right. Number two, all you need to create your own blackwork designs is graph paper and a pencil. Start collecting patterns in a folder to use later on. And three, when stitching a blackwork design, check regularly that you have not made a mistake in your counting. It's easy to drift off course by 1 or 2 squares, and it's heartbreaking if the two ends of a border don't meet at the end. Well, don't we all know the sad stories to do with that? Now here on the other side of this page, there's from the Batsford book, Royal School of Needlework Embroidery Techniques. And there's another way of using blackwork to create portraits and pictures of flowers. And what have I got here? I've got something marked out. Designers love to experiment using the patterns in the same way as pencil shading. The pictures right of an iris and an aged face worked by Royal School of Needlework apprentices Jennifer Malone and Margaret Deere show how you can use blackwork to create subtle detail. Well, I mean, the sky's the limit, isn't it, really, when you look at that? You get an old photograph out and see what you can do with that. Now, I've got a few things marked here. Yes, there's Jane Seymour's cuffs there. And you can see right on the edge of the cuff where there is blackwork there, so that the grime won't show up as much. That's what I got that one out for. Now this one. Oh, I thought you might just like to see Henry's son Edward all decked out. I thought he looked, it's a great portrait of him. Pop that down there. I think I must have some more examples here. I just put this in, it's not a blackwork thing, but I thought it was quite funny. Sir John Packington, 1549 to 1625, handsome, athletic and spendthrift, whom the Queen nicknamed Lusty Packington. And there's Lusty Packington. And see how they showed their legs off, those Elizabethan men. Lusty Packington. And oh, I'll show you this. I don't even know why I've marked him, but that is Elizabeth I's favourite, Robert Dudley. And I mean, he's not bad, is he? You look at his... I mean, I think I know why she was attracted to him. He looks like a confident sort of person, which you would have had to have been, I should imagine. Oh, here's a bit of blackwork. There we are. On the big collar there. And this is from Neville Williams' All the Queen's Men. Countess of Warwick. There's some more blackwork there. Right. Now this patterning here, the working method for holbein or double running stitch, I've marked that out, and I just want you to remember that repeating pattern. I will not remember the whole pattern, but just the concept of it, because it comes in a little bit later. Keep that here somewhere. Okay, now there's a little bit more Blackwork. That just came from, oh, that was New Stitches too, issue 104. And I rather like this Japanese Blackwork. That's gorgeous. I want to do that one sometime. And that is from Flosstube. What's the... Oh, issue 195. And here's Leslie Wilkinson's Blackwork Beginner's Guide to Blackwork. And it's got just about everything you could possibly want if you're thinking of doing some blackwork. And I did chart out a bit of blackwork, and I've done that. I'll show it to you shortly. Now, this one here, I stitched that one that she put together. I have shown you that one before, but I pulled it out today just to show you again. And there's a lot of Elizabethan theme in that. Tudor rose, lily and pansy motifs like these were used extensively in the 16th century embroideries. Roses were the emblems of the Tudor kings. And it can go from a simple one like that one to very complex designs. And your counting would have to be spot on, wouldn't it? So that you could avoid all those tears. And here are some of the patterns that are used for blackwork. I mean, if you were wanting to get into blackwork in a big way, I think this particular book would be the way to go. Okay, now then, here's the stitching that I did. So I just seem to have, my iPad seems to have gone AWOL at the moment. I'll have to see if I can find it. But in the meantime, I'll just show you this one. That was the stitching I did for the one I just showed you. And I quite enjoyed it. I like the border because I think it contrasts well with the simplicity of the motif in the middle. And now, this was my foray into designing a blackwork. Now, I would show you the original picture if I could find it. But it came, I thought it came from this book here, Brass Rubbing by Malcolm Norris. And I'll just show you the kind of, you see it has pictures like that in it. And I know I must have got it from something like this, they're brass rubbings. People would get great big pieces of butcher's paper and go into churches and cathedrals, and where there was a brass, like an etching over the top of a tomb in the church, they would put the paper over and then rub with a pencil, and that's where you get the outline from. Anyway, so I copied from somewhere, did it, made a chart out of it, and this was the result. Now, see, there's the lion, and the lion's paws there with the claws, and there must have been a lion around the back there, a symbol of this knight's background. And I could have done more detail on him in the Blackwork, but I quite liked it just being simple. So, I mean, Blackwork does lend itself to the creative side, that you can reduce something down to a simple shapes and patterns, and you can make a picture. So that's him. Sorry, I'm just looking for my iPad. It's decided to. Dear, dear, dear. Here it is. I was nearly sitting on it. I had it on the side. Oh, jeepers. I tell you. All right. So, I needed this to show you the other pictures of the Blackwork before we get off Blackwork and get on to Escher. Right, there's some there which you can scarcely see. Oh, I suppose you can see it now. It's over in the angle. It's there, and that's sort of more red work. It's the same, but it's just a different thread. And he looks like quite a determined sort of fellow. And there's some more black work there, but you can't really see it very well. But anyway, you know what black work looks like now. I'll just see if there's anything else to show you. There's a different way of doing it. But, you know, you can see there are these on the internet anyway, so it's really just to give you an idea. Okay, I think we'll get on to Escher now. There he is. He was born in the Netherlands. And here is an example of his work, which is metamorphose, is what he called it. And you can see there are just lines there. Now, sorry, I'll have to give you a bit of background here. My enthusiasm got me carried away a bit. Now, the graphic art, visual arts based on the use of line and tone rather than three-dimensional work or use of colour. Now, Escher, he had wealthy parents, and naturally enough they wanted him to be successful at school and everything. But Escher, he really didn't like schoolwork at all. He said that drawing lessons were a great relief to him. That was the only thing he wanted to do. So his father, who sounds like a very practical man, sent him off to a school for arts that covered a vast range of different methods of expressing yourself. So painting, drawing, etching, architecture. And his father wanted him to be an architect. But Escher really, after a couple of weeks, he wasn't interested. And his teacher suggested that he do etching, woodcuts and things like that, because he saw in him a great potential and felt that in the future he would be commercially successful if he was less logical in the way he looked at things and a bit more commercial minded. But Escher wasn't really a commercial minded person. He travelled to his own drum. But anyway, it took many, many years before Escher could live on the work that he created. But when he was, he ended up on Time magazine covers and all sorts of things. But it took many, many years to get that far. Anyway, a lot of his work are visual illusions that give the brain a workout. In mathematics departments have many pictures of Escher because so much of his work was closely aligned with mathematics. And according to Professor Ian Stewart, he said, mathematics and art are brought together by Escher. Escher shows mathematics as beautiful. Now, his full name was Moritz Cornelis Escher, and he was born in 1898 and he died in 1972 at the age of 73. And you can actually see him on the internet working on his woodcuts. They have got vision of him doing it. He went to the Haarlem School of Architecture and Decorative Arts, and that Haarlem is Haarlem. In his early life, he did not like school but loved drawing. And he studied under Samuel Jesseron de Mesquita. Escher was greatly influenced by the southern Italian landscapes and Moorish architecture. He was fascinated by geometrical symmetries, like interlocking repetitive patterns, and the mathematics of tessellation. Now, tessellation, I'll show you that a little bit later. And the Latin word, actually, for the tile is tesserae. So this is where the link goes back to the Blackwork, but I'll get to that soon. Now, Escher married a Swiss girl called Jetta, and he had 3 children with her. He particularly liked southern Spain, and he used to go hiking. He used to love going off on his own, hiking around all these different villages, going from one to another. And he said even the bed bugs he didn't mind, and the bad food, because it was all part of the experience. Now, here's the woodcut called Metamorphose that I was going to show you, but I thought I'd better give you some background first. And it's a big long piece, but as you can see, it starts out with lines that go to squares, and as these move along, he starts to change the shape so that they become like lizards. This is the tessellation. Then he goes on through to the geometric shapes there that go into a beehive, which of course we know the cells of a beehive are that shape. Then he goes from there through to making birds shapes, and then coming the other way we've got fish forming. So the birds are going that way and the fish are coming this way. Then he goes on and the birds go on. And then they change into blocks and into a building. Then he goes right to the end here of this building, and that would have been an influence from a southern Italian town. He goes right out, and you see this little tower here. He changes on again to the squares and a chessboard, onto the squares, and then back to the metamorphose. So the whole idea is that it's like a continuous cycle. So a very exciting artist. Now, when he was a young man, he went to a cathedral church in the Dutch city of Haarlem in 1920. And he wrote this letter to his friend and described himself in the third person. And he said, Escher listened to the organ and wrote to a friend, because you know how those churches have these massive big organs, you know, they're just huge. And he said, suddenly a gale rushed through the pipes of the organ, and a thundering voice proclaimed the glory of God. Then the young man lay down on his back on the cold stones, the large cold stones, while the hurricane blew and the voice thundered, and the columns of the church could bear the sound no more than he could. They stretched as a person stretches when waking up, so much so that they seemed about to break, and the young man laid and stretched out his arms, lying on his back on the cold stones of the church, as if to be crucified, and above him he saw the swaying and undulating columns. The organ grew much larger, the pipes reached from the earth to the heavens, and the young man felt such a strong wind that he rose up from the stones and flew into the sky between the swaying columns. And in that church there was a reflecting globe, and I'll see if I think I've got a picture I can show you, because I'll do all the pictures together. And that also had an influence on Escher. And I'll just got a few notes here about him. Yes, he did an etching called Never Think Before You Can Begin, and I'll show you that one. He grew up in a huge house with lots of servants, and he travelled widely with his parents. He went to a school in Arnhem and said he hated school. That was from before. He spent hours upon hours drawing, and constant inner struggle to put to paper what he saw in his head. Well, that's something that I think affects us all. You think, if only I could put down on paper what my eye can see. You know, you can try, but quite often you just don't quite get there. And he quotes, he says, a graphic artist is in a better position to express an idea clearly and purely, and is less inclined than a painter to be tempted to produce something with a hollow effect. And he says, using as few means as possible to express an idea as clearly as possible is an idea that I will always cherish. Right. Now, he finished his studies in 1922, and his final report stated he would be a good graphic artist, but he was too cerebral. Now, in 1923, he saw a girl in a cafe, and he was attracted to her bare arms. The girl was called Jetta. She was from Switzerland. She was there with her parents on holiday. And he composed a poem in French about her hands. And he said, hands are the most important part of the human body. They cannot lie as laughing eyes and the mouth can. And they married after a year of writing to each other, and they moved to Rome. And he made a series of woodcuts about creation, and has himself as Adam and her as Eve. I can show you that shortly. And he made numerous portraits of Jetta. He found it also joyful when he was travelling through the southern Italian towns and villages, that when he was drawing, sometimes he'd break into song and sing to the flowers he was drawing. In Rome, Jetta and Escher live a life of general detachment, and he said that perhaps he could open a sweet shop so that when asked, his mother could say, one son is a professor at the University of Leiden, and the other has a sweet shop in Rome, and I hope on telling this her heart will swell with pride. That's what he apparently said. He loved Sienna. He draws and makes woodcuts and writes letters constantly. He says that Dutch blood only flowed sporadically through his veins because of foreign influences. And because they were independently financed by his parents, they didn't really have to mix in. They lived in Rome, but they didn't really mix in with people much. And he says, I wish to hold no... Oh, yes, I've read that. After the birth of his son, Escher is a bit more concerned with financial income and creates wrapping paper designs, postage stamps, wood panels, murals and tablecloths. He said he was mostly fascinated with the southern Italian landscape and the Moorish influence on buildings and the bun-shaped roofs and the rocks. And he said the Renaissance and Baroque architecture didn't influence him in his work. I'll get on to his work shortly. He left Italy when fascism came, and he went to Switzerland. He was very depressed there. He didn't create many works at all because everything was covered with snow. And he said it was a white shroud that covered everything. Now, he went and visited Spain, and this is where things changed a lot for him, because he went to a Moorish temple there, and he saw all these tiles with regular patterns, and that triggered his imagination and was the basis of a lot of his inspiration for his work. He says it was in Spain that his eyes were opened. Moorish influence once more, the geometric designs on buildings, ancient and eternal patterns that repeated endlessly, a two-dimensional universe. All has wonderful, incomprehensible, splendid, enchanting surrounding us in the world depends on repetition and multiplication. The shapes around us only have meaning if we recognize them as clear symbols of people, animals and things we see around us. And so he tries to change those Moorish symbols on the tiles into shapes of people and animals. And the interesting thing about these works that he does is that you can never see one figure or two figures at a time in the picture. The other figure becomes the background to the foreground. I'll show you in a minute. This is, now, as time went on, Jetta became more and more disenchanted with life with Escher. And I suppose because he was so obsessed and driven with what he was doing, you know, he'd disappear for hours and they'd all be, you know, wanting to have dinner with him, but he was too busy working. And we all know that that's what geniuses are like. It's not that they're being purposely selfish, it's just that they're driven in a way that a lot of people aren't driven. And it's a kind of a, well, it must be very exhausting, really, to be that kind of brain that can't switch off, that you have to keep going. Anyway, so she ends up, she's lonely and unhappy, and I suppose the children have left home and so on, and she ends up in a sanatorium for a while. And he says, I'm a graphic artist, and apparently that's all I am, because I cannot help Jetta. But she goes and lives somewhere else, and I think she does come through it towards the end there. And he says, and initially, when he was a younger man, it seems like he saw the world in a kind of a harmonious utopia, really. But then when he got through the, you know, the war years and all the rest of it, and then the 60s, he wasn't impressed with the new age of the 60s and everything getting turned on its head. And he says, I prefer to live in a world of abstraction that have nothing to do with reality. And I think he got a lot more connected with the mathematics community as well, because I suppose in maths there is an order. I mean, you know how you have formula and all that sort of thing, that you might work on a formula to get different methods of solving something, but by and large mathematics has its rules, and maybe that did attract Escher. You know, and it says here, when she was depressed and everything, he feels she should pull herself together, and she says she is sick of the black and white. So that's something about him and his world. And then Professor Sir Roger Penrose, he's put a piece out, The Art of the Impossible, M.C. Escher and Me. And he talks about the great Moorish temple in Granada and the tiles and the fascination with the mathematics of them. So Escher had no mathematical training, but he was obviously gifted in that department. Right, so I will now show you what I've been rattling on about. I've got some printed pictures here as well, but I'll go through these on the iPad first, and then I'll show you the printed pictures. Now here's this fascination with repeating shapes. Oh, sorry, back to the Blackwork. And you can see there are white dogs, black dogs, and orange dogs. And that is a tessellated pattern because they're all like puzzle pieces. And you can't, as you look at, say, the white dog, the black dog and the orange becomes the background. And if you look at the black dogs, the white and the orange become the background, and so on. And that's very much how Escher did things. Now, there's a picture of him and Jetta. And look at the way he's looking at her. I mean, they had many happy years together. And that's their wedding day. He decided he would grow a beard. On the day that he met Jetta, he had coincidentally decided he wasn't going to shave. Now this is from his creation, Adam and Eve piece. I'll just try and... Oh gosh, what's happening here? Oh, right. And because a lot of it was woodcut, he printed a lot of them. Now that's the top of a tree. I'm going to try and show you. And that was the top part. And that's Eve there. I'll just see if I can just... Yeah, there they are. Adam and Eve. Jetta and MC Escher together. But these, again, are on the internet. So if you want to have a proper look at them, you can have a look. Now here's a bit of the Italian landscape. This is... I'll give you the link to this below. It's all about Escher, Metamorphose. It's an excellent documentary, and I've taken heavily from it. There's one of Escher's sketches of the Italian landscape. And here is one of the bun-shaped roofs that he was influenced by, which comes into a lot of his work. And he found the rocks fascinating, as he says. He emphasised the rocks. There's another one of the buildings that influenced him. And there's a drawing. There's tremendous depth, isn't there, in his work? Some more of the rocks that influenced him. Got a picture here somewhere. Some of them are a bit reminiscent of the Chinese pictures. Oh, you know how they have those, of mountains and water coming down and everything. And there he is on one of his hikes. Here's his interpretation of that. Right, now I'll just get on to these shapes that I've been talking about from the Grand Temple. Now, Jetta was kept very busy copying the shapes of these tiles. And as you can see, they're repetitive. That one's a particularly interesting one because you can sort of see how those shapes are repeating through the design. And just as the Assisi work was influenced by the inside of churches, Blackwork also came along because of these repetitive shapes. Remember that one I showed you and I said to try and remember it? Let's see, I'll check, I've got it here. That. Oh, sorry, I should have held that a bit longer. You can see where, because the Moors were in Spain for about 900 years. So, of course, there was a lot of influence there. But I mean, you get the idea of where Escher, you can almost see a bird coming out of that. But it certainly spurs the imagination, doesn't it? You realise why travel broadens the mind. And there's a sketch he did of the inside of the temple. On and on and on. Okay, now I'll just go on now to where when he got back to his studio he started to see if he could make these shapes. So it looks as though he was trying to make those abstract shapes into something that he felt was relevant to his world, because he wanted to make them come alive. And he found he was trying to work out the mathematics of all this. And someone told him about this crystallography. Some mathematicians who were also trying to actually give formulas to a lot of these tessellations. And he was absolutely thrilled that there was someone else that was trying to wrestle with how they worked, how they came together as they did. They were all given formulas and everything. Right, so now I'll just show you some more of his work. That's some of his more early stuff. Right, we'll just go on now and I'll see if I can find. Yes, he did portraiture, but I think he said that he quite liked doing Jetta, and of course he did himself, but he wasn't that keen on portraiture. And as I say, if you go online, you'll find these amazing things. Now this one here, he was on his way home one night and he saw this magnificent row of trees, and he said it was as though he'd seen them for the first time. So he had to draw them and he found that as they got closer, they were almost menacing. You get a little bit of a menacing there. It's funny, you know, Lowry didn't have any shadows, and this guy has shadows everywhere. And there they are receding into the distance. That's in that video that I'll give you a link to underneath. You can look at that properly there, because I can't really do it justice here. And there's one of his globes that he used to do. Right. See if I've got anything else here, and then I'll show you the paper ones I've got here. And that is a picture of that globe I was talking about when he was in the cathedral lying on the floor and looking up. That is sort of like a big globe there. So I think that must have influenced him to do more work with globes. Those eyes, I mean, they look driven, don't they? Oh, and there's a picture of Jetta. She looks a bit weary there, a bit pensive. But they were, I think they must have been very happy for a long time. I mean, these things happen. Right, now then, I'll just show you these, and then I might finish off with some more on there, but you might be absolutely exhausted with it by now. Because it does give the brain a workout, doesn't it? There's no doubt about that. Here's his tessellation, where he's got his shape and he's fitting them all in. That's called butterflies. Then this one, drawing hands, and he's got a right hand and a left hand there, and he was left-handed. This one is called Swans. And this one, it's very difficult to see this, but it's lizards that are coming actually off the page and climbing up over the books and then back down and back onto the page again. So yeah, reptiles, that one's called. And here are some more, a little bit like the dogs that we started with. I mean, the immense amount of work. I mean, no wonder he was missing out on dinner. No wonder he got any meals at all, really. And then this one is one of his challenging the art of the impossible. Is what there were all sorts of perspective changes, and you know, someone's floor is someone's roof and someone else's wall is someone's floor and so on. I mean, it's really, you know, mathematicians were incredulous. And he tried to draw infinity. I think this was the start of his attempts to draw infinity, because he liaised with a lot of professors. And initially it was all coming from the centre, and he was trying to somehow work out from the centre to the infinity. And this one, this is called, this is an infinity piece. And here, it just goes on and on and on and on. And the professor whose theory of infinity he was working on said that this was as accurate as he could see for a representation of what the professor was trying to get at. He said it was accurate to the millimetre. This one is called Puddle. Look how deep it looks. And I thought too that these look a little bit like fish going the other way, but I might have just been reading into that. Butterflies. Then this one is of MC and his wife Jetta, and he said they're connected here and up here, but he said he's not sure whether she would be happy with that. And here's one of his globes. And he said that this is hand with reflecting sphere. The head of the graphic artist ought to be more specific. The point between his eyes is at the centre. Whichever way he turns, he remains the middle point. And he says man's ego is uncompromisingly the centre of the world. And this is one of Harlequin's choices that I put in because he likes it, of the creation. The art of the impossible. And I had a little play around with tessellation, as it happens. And it's amazing how complex it is to make a pattern fit in. I mean, when it's there all for you, you can do it. But to start from scratch with a shape that can be tessellated, it's not easy. And that tessellates perfectly, that shape, because there's no gaps anywhere. And this one here, I've got little squares in between. So if those were all joined together like a beehive, like, you know, the honeycomb, they would all tessellate perfectly. But that one, I've sort of put a little square in between them. And I looked at those and I thought, well, really, if you try to use your imagination here. But if you saw those white bits as necks, then, and put a bit of hair on there, it looks like the back of people's heads in a way. So there's the green hair, blue hair, red hair, yellow hair and brown hair, and they're all looking at something in a like in a theatre or something. And then I suppose too they could almost be bottles with caps. The white is the cap. So you got a row of brown bottles and a row of red, blue, and so on. I did sort of mention that to my husband, and he looked a bit, Harlequin looked at me as I was stretching the imagination a little. But I don't know, I find it all very interesting, really. And the last word, I suppose, can be from Escher. And he says, only those who attempt the absurd will achieve the impossible. I think it's in my basement. Let me go upstairs and check. So, quite an eccentric, as you might say. So, now there's one. I've done a start on Harlequin. That was the one that I said ages ago I was going to start, and I was waiting for the material. And it's from a magazine. Sorry for the rustling there. It's not this issue, but it's called Discovery Needlecraft. It's what got me hooked on cross stitch in the first place, because they had a little giveaway thing. And it's this one, the Harlequin. And the page number is 2064. So I think with the Discovery Needlecraft, the pages were all numbered. So that's where he came anyway, on the scale of things. And I've done this section here is what I'm working on. And I've got opalescent fabric. There it is there. And I don't think you can see the sparklies. Or maybe you can a little bit. Yeah, you can see them a little bit. I think everyone has trouble showing sparkly off. But it's sort of green sparkle. And it's actually, as you can, it's coming through the stitching, which I quite like that. So that's going to be dedicated to my husband. And I've got another, sorry, I was trying to get the sparkle, but I can't get it. So, I know, sorry, I'll just see if there's any more on here. Because there are a few coloured patterns of his, but I'm sure you've all Eschered out by now. I should imagine. And as I say, you can have a look anyway. So, and so on and so forth. Oh, what's that on there? Sorry, I just thought I noticed something. Oh yes, there are birds going that way, obviously, but that way, I think it's a fish coming with its tail. Yeah, it's like a fish. Okay, maybe he was hallucinating because he missed out on too many meals. He was fascinated with fish. Right, well, that's all I have today, and it's gone on, and I do apologise for that. But I think he was such a fascinating person. And I hope that you all have a good stitchy time. over the next days and weeks. Oh, well, not weeks. I should get back to you before too much longer with something else. I have to wait until some inspiration hits me, or I wake up with a vision of a painting or something in my head. But as you can see, and I think this is where we bring it all together, that Blackwork and what this man did, what I find so amazing is that they were both influenced by the same source, but both went in different directions. But the patterning of the tiles comes through in both worlds, in the stitching world and in Escher's world. And because he did a lot of his work on the wood blocks, he could repeat it over and over again. So he could keep changing and so on. And there's a vast number of his works on the internet. Okay, oh, stop raving. Honestly, it's ridiculous. Okay, so thank you for your company. I'll see you again next time, and all the best from Stitch Bis Corner and Mary Rose. Signing off. Bye for now.